Paso artist Carlos Callejo has gained wide recognition for his larger-than-life murals on the walls of local buildings. But supported by a grant from the Lila Wallace Reader's Digest International Arts Program, which was managed with the help of the El Paso Museum of Art, Carlos was able to travel to Italy to learn about the art of the fresco, an ancient style of wall painting which first became popular in the days of the old Roman Empire. On his return to El Paso, Carlos participated in a series of workshops conducted by the El Paso Museum of Art to teach local students about the art of frescoes, especially the work of 14th century Italian painter Giotto, who revolutionized the history of painting by concentrating on the emotions of characters in the biblical stories he painted. But frescoes were not just a European phenomenon. They had been created in the New World by the Aztecs, and were revived earlier in this century by the Mexican muralist Diego Rivera, who used the fresco style to illustrate the tangled history of his country from the Spanish conquest to the present day. More recently, Chicano artists such as Carlos Callejo made murals about the Mexican-American culture and experience during the late 1960s and early 1970s. As the Chicano movement grew, there arose a desire to create more permanent murals, which in turn led Carlos to create a fresco for this project, on the walls of an alcove honoring Our Lady of Fatima in El Paso's Sacred Heart Church. Frescoes differ from regular murals in that the paint pigment is not just painted onto the wall, it is actually mixed into the wet plaster spread onto the wall. When the plaster dries, the paint pigment is permanently bonded to the wall. The painter has to paint each small section of wet plaster quickly before the plaster dries. By doing this, the painting will not fade or flake off with time. It will last as long as the wall itself stands. An important part of the project for Carlos was that local teenagers and art students were involved in helping and learning about frescoes. Just as Carlos had learned about the art and history of the fresco in Italy, he was now able to pass on that information to young students, who could then pass it on to others. In this way, the art of the fresco can continue to endure, possibly another 1,000 years or so.
Basically, the idea was for me to go, being that I'm a Chicano artist and most of my experiences in murals, to actually learn fresco techniques and learn the history of frescoes, with the idea in mind that I would then turn around, come back to my local community, and first actually do a fresco. We wanted to sort of trace down the tradition and the history of frescoes, and sort of kind of bring it up to date, or put some significance of some of the influences of Chicano muralism and where they derive and the roots of it. So it's sort of antecedents, and of course there's the antecedents doesn't necessarily just come from Europe. Also, the different Mesoamerican influences, that kind of thing. So in my approach for this fresco that I'm going to be doing, I'm sort of combining as well as the technique as well as the art itself. From my viewpoint, I believe that fresco painting was a very kind of flat imagery, and I'm kind of combining that technique with also a more contemporary design where some of the figures kind of pop out at you.
I think the theme of connecting the children back then with the children today, they're both like kneeling or standing or in postures of looking up to heaven, looking to God, or looking to Mary as our mother. And so it's good because I think it links all of humanity throughout time. Opportunity of the grant was offered to us, the possibility of having beautiful artwork, and our parish is very poor, so we would not have been able to afford it ourselves, but the fact that the museum was able to offer this to us was of great help to us, and we're very thankful. The other thing is that there's great devotion to Mary in the people of our parish, Mexican people, Hispanics in general, all Catholics in general. And so the fact that we will be able to do a piece of artwork as background for Our Lady of Fatima was something that would enhance our church and would, I think, help the spiritual life, the beauty of the church.
And it kind of became a challenge because it's like an already predetermined theme. And so I kind of got the idea of how, this church is, the Our Lady of Fatima was well received. When the Fatima was here in town, it probably received the most attention in terms for this parish and for this church. It got a lot of attention. The whole church was filled. And so it kind of became a challenge because how would I, my intent was to sort of take my imagery and sort of relate it or do something with the participants of this church kind of relate to the imagery. And that was, and being that Lady of Fatima appeared in Portugal, it was going to be kind of hard to do that. So what I basically did, as you probably know, the Lady of Fatima appeared to 3 children. So I kind of did a children's theme where I did the original children that from Portugal on one end of the wall, on one side of the wall, and then did some local kids with the church, with this church as a background, whereas the kids in Portugal is the Church of Fatima in the background, from 2 ends and sort of meeting in the middle, so thereby combining the theme to this population and to this area.
He really sticks to his original sketch, which is incredible considering, the differences in size, but he has it in his head so well what he wants the finished product to look like on the wall, that I think that he translates that real well into his sketches.
I think for me, it's most of my my recognition has been through mural, and murals is a little different than painting, simply because you're not working on a already set predetermined space, being your canvas. A lot of things you have to consider when you do murals. You have to consider the architecture and how your composition complements that architecture. So those are physical realities that in a canvas painter don't encounter. So it does become a little different. Also, you're working on a very large scale. As you can see, I am using projection on right now on this just as a background. As a background, and you can see the lines that I'm using are very thin lines. This is basically that I'm going to be using is just going to be just the background. All the other elements to this composition really is on top of that. So I'm going to just kind of outlining the thing and including my other images right over that. But it's basically for a guide for me. So my structures, if you see the drawing, you're going to see that I'm using structure as well as people and as well as angels. I'm trying to use, if you could want to hold it up for me over there. This is backwards, by the way, but if you notice that I'm using basically almost like a Renaissance style when using the angels, but using more of a Mexican approach or Siqueiros approach in terms of the real people. So it gives it effect of the outer world versus the the reality, that kind of a thing, so that there's a duality playing there, as well as the structure, for instance. This is only a sample, and the colors are not going to be as bold as you see here. I just, since I was working on a very light surface, being the paper, I had to kind of give it a little bit darker, but it is going to have almost a transparency tone to the angels, where these will stay intact in terms of a full color, just giving it that kind of a illusionary kind of effect. Basically, that's what it is. Now, you don't see the Lady of Fatima drawn in here. You just see sort of the outline, simply because it's going to be a real statue in front of this place. And we are already planning. The reason I'm using some of the pigments, I'm using some pigments that they have some metallic and pearlescent kind of effect to it. And so we are basically going to be installing a light in back of her where when you stand out here, you won't be able to see the light, but at least it will reflect against the wall. Because if you notice, all the light's coming from this side. So if we give, and if you put the light on this side, that means it's going to cast shadow. If you put lights on both sides, it's going to eliminate some, we hope that we're going to eliminate some of that shadow effect.
Well, basically, the fresco, reading them before, I never really had seen one being done live, and just very interesting how he simply lays the grid on it, as opposed to I figured he was just going to be using the brush stroke to paint it. He makes it very simple.
The frescoes is a very interesting concept. I think it's really cool how he's done that. And how he's mixing the pigment into the plaster itself to get the results. So I think that's how they started a long time ago.
Well, the mostly thing that I was very interested about him talking about his Chicano artist he does. I'm very interested in murals because I had never met an artist before that has ever done such wonderful murals like that. And I really think and the reason I like those kind of murals, well, it's part of my culture too, since I'm a Hispanic.
To start with, just being able to paint Our Lady of Fatima, like Carlos is going to be doing, I think it's a beautiful thing that he's going to be doing for the children within our community. Because I know that when Our Lady of Fatima has been to different churches, I see a lot of kids. I don't know if it's because of the children involved with the miracle of Our Lady of Fatima or what it is, but I went to a Catholic school, so I know probably, and I feel what these little kids see in Our Lady of Fatima.
It's interesting that here in El Paso there's a lot of devotion to Our Lady of Fatima, even though Our Lady of Guadalupe is, let's say, the one you would suspect, and of course the greater devotion is to Our Lady of Guadalupe. I would say there's no doubt about that with Mexican people or people of Mexican roots, but there's also a lot of devotion to Our Lady of Fatima, which that traveling, the pilgrim image from Fatima came through here, I think, in the 50s, and now again this past this year. And we've never had a larger crowd in this church as when the pilgrim image was here. So people identify with Mary as our mother, no matter which apparition it is, whether it's Guadalupe, Fatima, Lourdes. And so I think it links us all together through time in the same faith. And I think that that's one of the beauties of this a piece of artwork, that it links us with Portugal, which we never would think about anything significant about Portugal, but that's where the apparition happened. And the children for Portugal were children just like children here, who look to God. They have beautiful innocence to them. It's children like children throughout history. They're all children. And I think it links our faith throughout time and with the different nations, one church and one faith. So I think that's one aspect of the artwork that I like. Un Ave María. Dios te salve María, llena eres de gracia, el Señor es contigo, bendita eres entre todas las mujeres y bendito es el fruto de tu vientre Jesús. Santa María, Madre de Dios, ruega por nosotros los pecadores, ahora y en la hora de nuestra muerte. Amén. Y la bendición de Dios Todopoderoso, Padre, Hijo y Espíritu Santo, descienda sobre ustedes y permanezca para siempre. Amén. Antes de cantar un canto final a la Virgen que vamos a hacer, veo por acá a Carlos Callejo, que fue el artista que hizo esta obra. Pasa adelante, para que lo conozcan, y le estamos muy agradecidos por la obra que él ha hecho para nosotros.
The mission of the El Paso Museum of Art is truly educational, and we educate our community and our public audience through exhibitions and through educational events. We do the typical educational events most other museums in the country do, such as concerts, film series, illustrated lectures. But we realize that in El Paso we are truly enhanced when we work in collaboration. And truly this project with Carlos Callejo and working on the Fresco project here in El Paso is a collaborative event. It's also educational in the sense that one of our staff members and Carlos traveled to Italy to study Fresco, and then they brought this knowledge back to El Paso. They shared this information with students. And Carlos demonstrated his knowledge and his learning through creating a fresco in the Sacred Heart Church.
¡Que viva la Virgen María! ¡Que viva! Bien, todos los que gusten pasar y ver la pintura y saludar a Carlos, pues pueden hacerlo ahora, tienen unos minutos para hacerlo. Adelante.
Gracias.